shoot. No! No, I'm the murder doer, exactly! Oh no! Oh fuck! Oh my god!
Jesus Christ.
Shit!
My slimes.
Hello, Willie. Oh, have to meet a nice Willie in the pub. You want information on doras.to? Do I? Cheers. There was like a sudden kick. It was like a kick me in the tonsils. Is there something wrong with that Hulk? Die! God damn it!
There's nothing wrong with this Hulk, Jamie. There's nothing wrong with this Hulk at all.
End the night with the overriding taste of me in your mouth.
Hello audience, welcome to DDR5.
Welcome to the DDR5. It's the most glamorous night of the year, everybody. It's time. It's time for the podcast awards. Hello, everybody. I'm not wearing a three-piece suit. I'm wearing a suit. See?
I'm wearing a one-piece suit because I'm not even wearing the trousers.
Curtis says, I tried to explain the concept of this stream to my mates and they thought instead of dressing up fancy, you came in fancy dress. Dressing up as your favourite film, show, game. That's an excellent idea. If the part of the reason why this works is because it's something special that we don't have to put any effort into because we already own these clothes. I feel like that would be something we would talk about a lot and then never actually get around to doing if it became the thing that we did.
Got confused there because Twitch suddenly started telling me that I could get some Apple Plus rewards or something from watching your stream, but I realised it's just a Twitch wide thing. You haven't suddenly teamed up with Steve Apple to
not recently.
Apple sponsored.
No. This is our award show from last year. So we're going to be talking about some cool stuff. I haven't set up any chat-based presenting listing of the stuff that we reviewed because it will come up on screen. We can copy and paste it out of the reviews master sheet, but I honestly, last time it looked so shit and was so hard to read that it's almost less useful than just you reading it off the screen. So if you want to see all the things that we did talk about, just when we start talking about the nominees, we'll read them out loud and we'll also show them on the screen and all that kind of stuff. You should be able to see it. But I probably won't be posting it in the chat in any way. Also, it's fucking boiling at the moment. So while we are all dressed up nice now, I think I'm intending to keep the tie and the jacket on until the end of the intro. And then before we go into the first segment, I think that will be long enough for me to have said I've done it. and then I'll take off the tie and the jacket, I think. Especially because this shirt is very tight around the neck.
Speaking of after the intro, are you recording audio?
Oh, I am now. Yeah.
As am I, but I don't actually see the waveform. There we go, I see the waveform. I'm too quiet, but I'm trying to filter out the noise of my fan behind me, so I think I'm just going to have to talk very into my microphone.
Be confident. I feel like the August podcast would just be the two of you in swimming trunks in paddling pools. That'd be great. I think that's my ideal working environment.
Koto, if it was an option, it's what I'd be doing today. It's like, Jamie, why didn't we hire out a swimming pool as our venue for this?
Because the podcast is losing money. Hand over fist.
That's always been true.
Yeah, but until it makes any money, it can't have the pool. I'm afraid that's just the way it is.
Yeah, Jamie, when are you going to update the logo to reflect my my hair and luscious grooves?
Sorry, what?
You're gonna Koto's asking, when are you gonna update the logo to reflect the fact that my hair has changed?
Because I probably won't, because I like the fact that your hair goes up and my hair goes down, because my hair is shorter than that logo as well. And I think if both of us sort of come to having similar hair length, that won't look very good.
Well, it would make us more symmetrical.
Yeah, and it will just slowly start looking more and more just like one man, but with half a beard.
and one with a complete hair of complete face of facial hair, and the other completely unable to grow any.
Yeah, and you'll be able to tell that through the logo. You'll be able to tell it wasn't a style choice, but an active part of their biology.
How does StyleTech know about the vomit logo? I thought we kept that under wraps.
No, I posted on the Discord earlier to loyal fans.
I thought we put that in a vault with a £500 financial barrier to it.
We did talk about it being on a like a Patreon at some point, and then that just never materialized. And I thought, well, I'll put it on the Discord for the loyal people who've stuck around. Also, Koto, very much do tell your mates about the stream. It'd be lovely to have people in.
Please tell literally anyone about us.
tell people we've been here for years.
We have zero marketing budget in both finances and personal energy.
I swapped over my Instagram to be like a professional one now, so that I can like schedule posts and stories. And every now and again, it will just take one of my posts and be like, "This would make a good ad." And it's like a bunch of photos on a stag do or something. I'm like, I don't think it would. I don't think that this would be good. What is this advertising? Yeah.
Advertising is the stag do that other people could have gone on, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Maybe.
now advertising the concept of stag do's you can't be at.
Yeah, exactly. Well, FOMO sells, baby. FOMO sells.
But what
You go to a stag.
Yeah, I guess.
Go
I'm
to
not
a
really
stag
selling
do.
anything.
Go to a stag do and then show people that they didn't go to that stag do, but then charge people like 75 quid to maybe come to the next stag do that you go to. You can be my +1. Sign up now.
I like. Since when have you ever been to a stag do that has +1s?
You'll make it happen.
I like the idea of you turning up to a friend's stag do and being like, "I just brought some friends. I hope that's all right." Who are they?
Yeah.
I don't know. But they're paying me, so.
Yeah, and for 30% of the proceedings, I'm sure they'll be fine.
Yes, 30%. Wow, they get quite far in.
A stag do doesn't. You don't have to have a wedding associated with a stag do. Like that is the culture, but there's no legality. I mean, you can just have a stag do every Friday night and just.
You could like the stag do experience, like it's like like we
like the Crystal Maze experience, but for stag do's.
We did look up. We were looking up Vegas weddings because a friend of ours got married in Vegas, and we were looking up the kind of things that you can get done. And a surprising, or maybe not surprising, but a large amount of casinos offer fake weddings where you go through the whole process, but you don't legally get married at the end of it. And like that, like it's an advertised package that they do that you can just pretend to get married in Vegas.
I see why, right? Like either we're already married but we'd like a Vegas wedding, or we don't believe in marriage but we want the experience of a Vegas marriage. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or you trick someone into thinking that they're really getting married.
I bet you that's happened.
Yeah.
Like it's something out of a sitcom, but also there's enough real life going on at any given time that I think it could have happened.
I think we should organise a big group trip to Vegas and then get someone fake married without them realising.
Should we maybe set up a fundraiser, and if people reach a certain target for the Bunyip review, we do the experience wedding together?
we get fake married.
That's
we
like
get fake married in Vegas.
Yeah, like raise £25,000 for the Bunyip review, and we'll have a fake marriage in Vegas.
In Vegas.
Live streamed podcast recording live
live streaming. Yeah.
I
mean,
okay.
Mate, that would get us on the map.
2030. 2030. What it was about this.
Now.
It was about this many years ago that we were like, let's do a 24-hour podcast. So now if we set up a whole new
but that one didn't. That one was just a certain amount of Bunyip bucks spent, not a certain amount of real world money spent.
it's the next level up.
Also, can you imagine if I got fake married to you before I got real married to Laura?
Yeah,
She's just
yes.
watching me walk down the aisle with you.
Yes, I can imagine that. I'm imagining it right now. I like the image. It's a very simple thing for me to visualize.
Oh, amazing. All right, should we start the show?
Mary says she'd be best man.
Yeah.
Do you want to start? Yeah, we can start a show. Do you want to start a show? Do you want to start an award show?
Do you want to do your bit?
What's my bit?
Syncing the audio?
That is my bit, isn't it? This isn't a normal podcast. I don't know how this shit works. All right, Jamie, we do 3, 2, 1, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
And ideally, you clap or click when you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You make some loud noises. Okay, you ready? Are you ready?
Yeah,
I
was just imagining going 1, 2, But that's like not helpful because it's not on the beats.
No, it's not helpful at all.
Okay.
Right. Wonderful. I mean, you can just grab a pen and just smack it against your mic. I don't mind, but anyways. All right, we're going to be doing 3, 2, 1, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1, and 1,
1,
2,
2,
3,
3,
4,
4,
5.
5.
Amazing. That will be so easy for me to synchronize.
Smash in. All right. Should we get going then?
All right.
All right. Okay. Hello and welcome to the most glamorous night of the year. That's right. It's the night you've all been waiting for. It is the Bunyip Awards. Look at the stars sparkling as they sparkle their way down the golden carpet to the wondrous ceremony that is the Bunyip Awards. I'm your co-host, James the Bunyip Man Willis, and I'm here with my co-host, Jonas 3 Trophies Garway. How you doing, Jonas?
I was happy when I had 1. I was ecstatic when I had 2. And I'm elated to have now not 1, not 2, but 3 trophies.
And it's funny because they called you 3 trophies before you had 3 trophies.
Yes, it was almost like destiny knew that I would reach this moment in my life, and it only took 32 years and a couple of months, which, as anyone knows, is it's about the right time to be achieving your destiny.
I would say so. I would say it's all downhill from here. You've reached your peak. That's clear.
Yeah, I'm not going to aim for a 4th trophy. I just don't think that'll mesh well
With your name, with how people know you.
Well, the family have been disappointed in me enough, and I think to throw away the namesake would really just throw a wrench in that number,
Yeah, absolutely. Because the 3 trophies you have are for being just a horrible, rotten bastard. So yeah, it's fair enough.
So I think tomorrow I'm gonna go give an ice cream to a 5-year-old or something, something nice.
I don't think you can do that. Not if you don't know the 5-year-old.
I'll do it to one of the 5-year-olds that I previously aggrieved. How about that?
Oh yeah, I think that's fair enough.
Yeah.
And they're here today in the audience of what is to be a spectacular award ceremony. We are going to be talking about the everything that we reviewed in 2023. This is kind of an odd award show because it's a roundup of what we feel were the best things in 2023, but not necessarily the things that were made in 2023. All those other award shows, they award things based on the year they were made. We just award things based on the year we became aware of it and decided to talk to you about it. So we're going to be going through our favourite TV shows, games and movies of the last year and deciding which was the best, objectively the best, and also if it beats our current reigning champion show, movie or game in that category. And we will be talking about the things that we've watched on the Netflix randomizer and our most hated or our most beloved of those things. Jonas, did you have any exciting memories from 2023? Do you feel like it was a good year for media?
Oh, what a question that you have sprung upon me. Um. Yeah.
Unscheduled banter. Oh shit.
How dare you do this to me? Yeah, I think it was genuinely a very good year for a lot of things. It was definitely a good year for games, and obviously, I think a lot of the medias that I think support these statements we will talk about later. I think movies. I was maybe not the greatest year for movies. I think, but I think that's because it's coming off Everything Everywhere All at Once in 2022.
Mm.
So
That being said, I think that there were some real bangers, but it wasn't like a real it wasn't an across the board amazing thing.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. That's just me. I think it was really amazing in terms of games. An anime fan, really loved it in terms of anime. I think there was some decent TV in there as well. You know, we'll talk a little bit about some good TV. Um, yeah, that's all I can really think about with 2023. What else happened?
Did you feel like, and we'll talk about it properly later, but did you feel like it was a good year for randomizers? Did you feel like you were punished too much, or did you feel like it was fairly soft on you?
Was I punished too much? Was I punished too much? I'm trying to remember the worst thing I watched last year. We had to watch, we didn't watch any Peppa Pig, but we did watch Barbie.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I think it was all right. I'm trying to think, there was less stand up. There was less painful stand up comedians, I think.
Yeah.
And we had I feel like we maybe had some pretty weak documentaries in there, but they're kind of mercifully short, so they don't they don't stick around.
Yeah.
The most painful ones are when it's 3 hours and it's bad cinema for 3 hours. I think we were blessed to not have much of that going on.
All right. Well, we'll get into depth with it later, but to begin with, I guess we'll move into our TV show section. Before we move into that, it is about 300 degrees in our awards ceremony recording studio, so I'm just going to take off this tie and this jacket because fucking hell,
Yes!
I might actually genuinely die.
I don't want the hot clothes on anymore.
I think next year.
Audio stripping.
Yeah. I think next year we may try and strike a balance between having enough time to experience the thing and not dying during the recording bit. And take this.
Demi, have you considered that if we do this in summer, maybe we should just wear I don't know, white vests and drink Stella Artois? The vibe just changes. Rather than being high prestige, it's like King of the Hill barbecue.
Maybe that should be. Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe the problem is that we're trying to associate ourselves with the glamour of a normal award ceremony, and actually we should tread our own path. We should come up with a whole different vibe.
Yeah, we should say fuck you BAFTA, and we're just sat here in wife beaters, with cans of beer and.
I think that would suit the general vibe of our show. Right, let's move into our first category of show. And first up, we will be talking about all the wonderful TV we watched this year. And I think there's some real gems in here. So this year I reviewed 1899 in January, then that 90s show, The Last of Us, Poker Face, Auntie Donna's Coffee Cafe, The Office, Chinese Born American, Futurama, Barry, Inside Number 9, Bodies, Frasier. And Jonas, what did you review last year?
Last year, I started off the year by talking about the wicked anime Chainsaw Man. Then I went on to talk about Dragon Age Absolution, The Patient, Atlanta, Double Fine Psych Odyssey, Eden, The Bear, Extraordinary, One Piece, the Netflix live-action show, Sanctuary, Gen V, and finally Scott Pilgrim Takes Off.
And there's a lot of good stuff in there, but I think that both of us will probably agree with our choices for this year's nominations. I ended up going with The Last of Us, and Jonas, your choice was
The Bear.
The Bear. So I'll go first, talking about my show, and then once Jonas has talked about The Bear, we'll have a little discussion and decide, because this is our other innovation on award shows, is that we don't know who's actually going to win it when we arrive to the show. And we do all of the backroom dealing and discussions live on the show. I don't know why the Oscars doesn't do this. I think it'd be a much better watch. So, The Last of Us. The Last of Us, for those of you who might not remember, it was an adaptation of the video game, and it's basically about a zombie apocalypse, or sort of a fungal zombie apocalypse kind of thing, where a man loses his daughter and sort of finds a surrogate daughter in this girl, Ellie, who he helps travel across the country. And I think that there was a lot of other good options in this list for me. There's some of the stuff that I really, really loved. Poker Face was one of the best comedy TV shows I've seen, comedy mystery TV shows I've seen in a long time. I think that Barry just blew me away at how good that show got as it went through. But I would say that The Last of Us to me stood out for multiple reasons. I think the first is that I may have never seen as good a video game adaptation as that. It managed to absolutely take the source material and run with it. It was identifiably that game turned into a show, and yet they still managed to also really adapt and use the things that worked to create something brand new. I think that the way that they broke it down into episodes, where they broke it down into chunks of the game and use those to tell new, interesting stories, it should be a blueprint for how we adapt video games in the future. And I just think it was a really exceptional way to do it. And that kind of leads into my second big thing that I really loved about it, is that it managed to tackle really interesting issues through a really clever and stylish lens. The show is clearly heavily about issues of sort of LGBT identity and the sort of threat that LGBT people and women feel on a day-to-day basis, as sort of personified through this idea of a dangerous world that's trying to attack them. And each episode sort of vignette managed to tackle a different sort of lifestyle or sort of situation that could be affected by these kind of things. And it had some of the most incredibly just beautiful and affecting and terrifying TV that I think I've seen in a really long time. I was really impressed by how they managed to pull this out the bag, especially because sort of expectations for adaptations of video games are so incredibly low, and yet this not only surpassed those expectations but absolutely blew them out of the water. I'm super excited for a season 2 of this show, I'm just a massive fan of it, and I'm really glad that they did it, which is not something I always say about adaptations of video games. Jonas, tell me why you chose the bear.
Yeah, so before I talk about the bear, I just want to sort of shout out, there's a few other TV shows here that were absolutely phenomenal. Just Chainsaw Man as an anime in terms of its production, but also a lot of what it did in terms of just its openings and endings were really quite revolutionary. And it just adapted a really cool manga that people are super excited for. Double Fine Psych Odyssey, this was just a documentary about the video game making process at Double Fine, who made Psychonauts 2, and to this day, there is nothing nearly as comprehensive and as eye-opening that just shows the entire process, that shows it really honestly, that has a camera that is present and just constantly turned on in a game development studio. And for them to put so much money and so much budget into just showing that story really honestly, all the highs and the lows and project meetings. They just did a 1 year later episode, by the way. They just did a sort of here we are 1 year after the release of this game, after the release of this documentary. So it was really cool to revisit that. One Piece, weirdly, was a good anime adaptation. Those don't happen. Good anime adaptations just to live action, they just do not exist, really. And One Piece, while not nearly doing what The Last of Us did for The Last of Us, it's still it's a pretty solid 7 or high 6 out of 10, and that is an absolute miracle in a sea of like 3s and 4 out of 10 anime adaptations. And the year ended with Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, which was just a really lovely revisiting to a world that like was so important to a lot of our like teenage identities. Like it really validated, I think, the nerdiness in a lot of our friendship group and like a lot of our age group. And to revisit that world and to turn Ramona Flowers into the protagonist that she deserves to be was just really cool. But all of that, to me, kind of paled in comparison to the cooking prestige show that is The Bear. The Bear came out swinging in season 1 by basically just kind of telling this story of this fine dining chef that is given the responsibility of like a greasy sandwich shop, like a Chicago like Philly steak cheese sandwich kind of, you know, baguette shop, right? That's massively like high customer base, quick turnarounds, like very like, I don't know, rough and ready staff who are like really kind of no formal training, no formal education, people that have just been taught to basically walk into a kitchen and just make this food happen. And to have the world's most exclusive kind of fine dining chef, the man who has come from some of the best restaurants in the world, come in and take ownership over this sandwich shop. And he spends the entire of season 1 seeing the potential, but also like completely crumbling under the stress and the emotional weight of what it means to take on that shop from his now deceased brother, and the strain of the relationships that he has with every single chef and every single individual like that's related to that business. And by the end of season 1, it decides, like, it kind of tells you that it's going in a direction, like, okay, there is like a second act to this entire story. And then I think it came out after I reviewed it, but season 2 just absolutely took this show from like a near favorite to just a completely like lifelong obsession, with some episodes that just told these really succinct, beautiful stories that were so humanistic in their elements, that were so much about growth and craft and passion and just finding yourself in a space that you didn't think had room for you, and finding that there is room for you, finding out how to make that room, or that that room's always been there, but you just, you know, someone kind of had to gently show you the way. With some amazing acting, with some really amazing guest performances, with some really like high octane like stakes and stress, like, you know, edge of your seat kind of stress moments, to do largely with like human relationships, to do with people trying to work together despite it all. And that all is like a heavy load of, you know, financial stresses and romantic relationships and business relationships and expectations put on you by not only people in the room but people outside of the room, you know, expectations that stay with you no matter where you go. The Bear did all of that really masterfully. I'm aware that season 3 has come out. I have not started season 3. I have heard not amazing things about season 3, which kind of, you know, has made me scared to start it. But I, you know, I do want to do that eventually, because I want to try and understand what this show, like, what it wants to present, and more importantly, I kind of want to understand, does it feel like it knows when it's going to end, or is it kind of just plodding along with popularity? Because I think one of those things is better than the other. But from what I have experienced so far, and from what I have experienced when I put this up for nomination, it was easily just some of the best television that I was watching at the time.
Yeah, I think that we can take it up to the end of season 2, and because I've only seen season 2 as well, so I think we'll do it based on that. And if season 3 turns out to be awful, we'll rescind the award if it wins it, or something like that.
We'll ask them to send it back. Yeah.
Okay, so that is The Last of Us and The Bear, 2 excellent shows. And now we need to decide which one of them deserves the award for best TV show we reviewed of last year. So I'll start with a little bit about how I felt about The Bear, because I watched it, often a little peek behind the curtain. If we decide on what we want to be our nominee in, like, at the end of December, and then we give a bunch of time so that the other person can play or watch any of the things that they haven't played or watched. So I started watching The Bear because of this, but I had always intended to watch it. And I was just blown away by it. Like, it's such a great show. It's opens really well, which is really difficult for a show to do. It's really difficult to have like a pilot episode that just immediately grabs you in and just gets you going. And then it has just some absolutely stellar episodes in it that are like super, super memorable. And I think the first series, there was a lot of pressure, and that was sort of part of the point of it, that sort of cooking thing one. But the second series did a really good job of having, like you say, like really nice episodes of people fitting in where they didn't think they were going to fit in, and sort of a feeling of serenity occasionally, which was just a really nice thing to have in that show. Like, the tense episodes are great, but so are the calmer episodes, and they struck a really nice balance of those things.
Like, season 1 has so many characters where you're just seeing them at their worst, and you're always seeing them at their worst. They're never given an opportunity to be their best.
Yeah.
And then season 2 gives those characters whole episodes or whole arcs across the entire season where you see nothing but them learning to become their best version of themselves. And it's done in contrast to, like, the head chef. Like, the head chef comes in at his best, and he's better than everyone else, and he's the top dog, he's the best chef, and he's trying to bring everyone up to his level to make it better, to make the restaurant better, to make the shop better, to make everything better. And then actually, as everyone rises in season 2, we kind of see them like start to overtake him in certain ways, and he really starts to kind of he starts the show as very much this hero coming in trying to save the day. And it's just really phenomenal to see this kind of dynamic starts to shift in season 2 as he starts to kind of actually be holding people back. It's really lovely.
Yeah. I think the thing that makes this show stand out from the other things on this list, and why it deserves to be one of these last two, is that to me it really felt like a show that trusted its audience. Like, it would drop you into the middle of conversations, and it would some things would run really fast, or it would understand that you understand how human beings are, and so it would allow you time with people just talking as a family about things like sort of family sort of habits and things that they knew as a family that you don't as an audience member, and trusted that you understood that was the point of this, or dropped you into the middle of sentences and expected that you would pick up context clues to get where you're supposed to be. I think it feels like a distinctly different thing to other dramas on TV who feel like they need to situate you in the world and handhold you through a lot of things. I really liked it really gave the world a sense of texture, that it was like a real, like, gritty world that you were peering into at point. And I think that's like what really makes it stand out. What did you think of The Last of Us? Like, how did you feel about The Last of Us?
I liked it. I liked it, I think, just as much as like everyone kind of was supposed to like it. I remember everyone absolutely hyping it up, and me kind of never getting around to watching it, and then eventually sitting down and doing that, and it was just like, yeah, this is not only exactly how I think I remember the video games, but I'm watching it through the lens of prestige television, and it's hitting all the same narrative like buttons and beats, and it's impressing me in the same ways, and I'm getting attached to these characters, like, with even though I'm seeing them portrayed by different actors, by different faces, different voices, and things like that. The expansion of episode 3 is, I think, the highlight of the entire show. I think there is not a single part of Last of Us that is so well, not even transcribed, because that original storytelling isn't in the game. Like, that's adapted, a television only. Yeah. But there was no singular episode of that world like nearly as well as adapted as the that episode 3 story. And then I think the rest of it was just like, it was great in the way that it needed to be great. It was great in the way that, like, yeah, it was prestige television. You could tell a lot of people after watching it, it's like, did you know that was a video game? And they'd be like, what? Really? Wow. But what about all the, like, press X to jump, or no room in your inventory, or, you know, stabbing a syringe in your body and that suddenly brings you up to full health. You know, like, what about all the weird little nuances that video games tend to kind of introduce into their world building that, you know, tend to hold a story back from making sense to an audience? And it's like, you know, it goes to show that the original writing of Last of Us was so well done to kind of to be so adaptable without further influence, without any real needing to twist the formula in that way. For me, there was one thing I really wanted them to get right with The Last of Us, which is it's literally the last conversation exchange between Ellie and Joel.
Mm.
And for me, it was really important that that happened well, that happened correctly, because for me, that's the most influential part of the game. For me, is, you know, in most games it's kind of to be expected that you'd remember the ending, but I do not remember the ending to any video game as viscerally as I remember the ending to The Last of Us. And they nailed that in the show as well, and I was really happy to have that entire experience like kind of put on the table, and for it to just be not just digestible by like non-gaming audience, but actually like beloved by non-gaming audiences. You know, it lends a credibility and a validity to that entire industry that I think, like, you know, generally people are unwilling to give it that credibility quite so easily. Like, they need convincing, and a lot of people, you know, they'll just dismiss it offhandedly, and they're going to do that for the rest of their lives. But I think having a show like this, as well as movies doing well in the cinema, that also take from the video game industry, I think, like, having video games come to other mediums successfully is just a win for both industries massively.
And I think that this show really, the reason why it deserves to be one of these two is it lays down a blueprint for how to do this, right? You see elements of how it's succeeded in Fallout, in that it understands that, like, the level structure of a game lends itself quite well to sort of vignettes, like short films, and it plays like each episode is almost a short film, or I think it's sort of actually a lot of Last of Us had sort of couplets of episodes, but like it has sort of a story within the story. You have the, you know, the you know, the lone man living alone, or like the pastor and things like that. You have the final episode. You have all these sort of short vignettes, which I think really makes that show work really well. It allows them to explore these sort of contained ideas as short films, and yeah, I think that like years down the line we're going to have a bunch of really great video game adaptations who learn everything that they know from this TV show. So we have to pick one to be the best of the year. Which do you think is better?
I was grappling with this over the last few days.
Mm.
And I sat down and thought about it. I think if it were season 1 to season 1, I think it would be The Last of Us. But
I'm going to do a poll in chat. Sorry, while you say this.
Okay,
I
think season 1 of The Bear is good, but I think season 1 of The Last of Us is extraordinary. But I also think that season 2 of The Bear is extraordinary as well. And so I sat down and thought about this, and I think for me, I decided that I would like to see The Bear win this, if only because I think it hits those high points more frequently. And I think it's a more average show on the whole, but I think when it hits the high points, I think it does it quite frequently, and in a way that felt quite emotional and relatable. And, like, I don't know, there was something very warming about The Bear, but I think it was like every other episode or every third episode, I think, hit that high for me. In The Last of Us, I think there's one episode that absolutely knocks it out the park, like 10 out of 10, and it's that episode 3. And then I think the rest of the show is just really good. But I don't think anything else peaks quite as high as episode 3. It feels like a really high point, and I feel like the show averages out really well, but it never gets that peak quite as well, I think. Like even with the cult leader, even with the couple that they kind of have to share a house with, and it goes wrong. I yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it.
I think that I think that I think that the last episode really hit me of The Last of Us. And I think that I think I was going in thinking The Last of Us mainly because I thought that what I felt like what it did was genuinely different, right? It felt like a really new thing that I'd seen. It felt really like the way that they handled like LGBT storylines in the sort of environment that they handled them in, like the way that they'd sort of transitioned that zombie stuff away from like consumerism analogies into this idea of like a general threat of like minorities and things. I thought was really clever and really well done and added just something really important to that show. But I think actually this conversation has swung me over to the bear a bit, because thinking about how cleverly layered the characters are in that show, and how like it has some of the things that I really loved about Better Call Saul. This idea that like it has a sort of general level of pace that when it spikes and when it hits sort of peaks, you really notice. And when Better Call Saul, it's so quiet and so slow that when it's it doesn't have to be that loud to go off. But there are the Bear season 2 really gets the hang of having these like beautiful serene moments and then real ramps into kind of extreme threat that sometimes feels quite unrelenting in the way that like they just have a handle of pace on that show which is so exceptional. I think I'm leaning towards the Bear, but I could go either way to be honest. But I think if you're thinking the Bear, I'm thinking probably the Bear.
I'm thinking the Bear at the moment, and what I'd love for us to sit down and get more of The Last of Us. So getting what they bring into Last of Us 2 season 2, getting the completion of the Bear's narrative. Like I'd love to see their complete arcs. I'm also like as a small point against The Last of Us, it's not the television show is taking from something that happened years ago. So it's not the television show's original writing. They're taking from a very strong product and adapting it incredibly well. Which it's like,
but see, I think that's part of why it is so good, and a plus point of it, that it's done something that people have struggled to do for decades, right? Is adapt a video game in a way that actually genuinely makes sense, that actually genuinely like they've built a framework for how to do this, and it actually genuinely works as a television show, but you still feel like you can still feel the sort of the video game in there. Like there's moments in that show where they walk through a door and the camera watches them go through two double doors from a distance, and then the next shot is them closing the doors, and it feels like a level barrier, right? But it also totally makes sense within the visual language of the show, and they do that all the time. Like Joel picking up like a shotgun from a dead body in a certain way. Like they translate the language of video games so well that without it feeling like wink, wink, nudge, look, it's a video game. They just did a really great job of translating that and taking what worked and running with it, and like taking what works in television and wrapping it within that. And I think it's pretty incredible to be able to pull that off to a level where people who've been burnt 300 times before are like, yeah, you were the first to do it, and everyone was now ready to watch Fallout because they were like, it's been done and it works. We can do it now. We can do video game TV.
And it's weird though, because they are very different shows. Like I don't know what Fallout did take from The Last of Us and what it chose to leave behind to end up with a very different tone.
But there's things you can see the bones of it, right? Each episode has a sort of vignette story within it, right, which tells you more about the characters. there's things that are clearly directly ripped from the video game and quite video gamey, but done in a way that also makes sense in the television world they built. So the people using stim packs or looking for Radaway or things like that. Like there's the thing that it really failed with is its sort of kind of wank overarching story, which Last of Us luckily already had a really great one, so they could work with that. But I think there's a blueprint there, which I think we're going to see over and over and over again. Is these sort of like, as soon as people work out the properties they want to milk the most money out of, we're going to see that over and over and over again. But that all being
enough.
said, I think that I think what you're saying is right. That the bear is something truly unique. Like I said about the first episode coming out of the gate with a pilot that just worked. That's really rare in a TV show, that you can watch a pilot and be like, the last one I watched like that was Severance, right? And that won the award last year. So, like, yeah.
I accidentally rewatched all of Severance, thinking that we were going to talk about it today, and then I was wrong. I was like, that was over a year ago, Jonas. But there's a few other points about the bear that like I really want to bring forward. Where it's like, I was talking about those moments of like humanity, of like characters finding themselves that season 2 gets to introduce. For me, there was this amazing moment. So it's in episode 4 of season 2, where they have this pastry chef, Marcus. He's a black guy. He's got sort of come from like a low income background, hasn't had many opportunities, but like learns to bake, kind of likes doing it, and then finds this sandwich shop that will let him bake. And in all of season 1, it's like he's learning to keep up with the chef, and he's like trying to learn how to make like simple desserts that will impress. And he's constantly like, hey, I made this chocolate sponge cake, like, how is it? And everyone's like, oh, this is pretty good, well done. And then there's a point where it's like, it's clear that he can't improve anymore. And there's a whole episode where he just gets sent to Denmark. And he just spends a whole episode like kind of doing this internship at this cafe or pastry or like bakery or something in Denmark, alongside another really incredible actor whose name I'm forgetting the name of.
Yeah, he's in lots of stuff.
He's a phenomenal actor. He's Adam Warlock in the Will Poulter. That's his name, Will Poulter. And it was like it was watching this mentorship happen on screen, and it was really quiet and peaceful. And he has these funny little moments where he just meets people in Denmark, like he's feeding this cat on a houseboat, and he like helps a man that kind of falls off his bike, and he just gets these really kind of nice, peaceful, but quite emotional relationships that are just his, and they don't necessarily inform his growth as a baker. They don't necessarily, none of that actually gets to come back with him into the kitchen, but it comes back with him in like how he appreciates the people he works with and the culture he lives in, and like he brings part of that culture back with him, that kindness and that generosity and that open-mindedness. And it happens with fucking Rick, like the one who's like a piece of shit, like a complete absolute bastard. It happens with him, and like it's Olivia Colman.
Yeah.
Olivia Colman is the one that kind of gives him like 5 minutes of mentorship, and the whole episode is about him hanging out with a bunch of snobbish, like, hosts and waiters, and watching them all take.
Snobby.
Well, that his point,
Yeah.
from his perspective, he enters the restaurant and they are all he thinks they are all snobbish, because they all take their job super seriously, and they're all like, why do you know that? Why do you care about that? Why do you go to the extra lengths to do that? And then he appreciates that it's like, because they take pride in making other people like have a good day, like it's that kind of element. And he goes, oh shit, I never realized that that's something I could take pride in. And it's watching that evolution of like these two minor characters, and it happens with like the Latino chef as well, as she learns to like become better at like at chopping through a cooking class and things like that. It happens with like the electrician who like learns to become like good front of house staff as well. Not to mention the Christmas
not spoil
episode.
the whole second series.
Oh god, yeah, you're right. But there's all these moments of growth that for me, they're all memorable, and they're all really memorable. Like they're all kind of going to stay with me forever, I think. These characters and these moments of growth. And I found that really special. Like that's why this show was more important to me than like actually the animes I loved last year. You know, like I could have made you watch an anime, Jamie, but I
Saying
didn't.
quite a
I
lot.
made you watch The Bear.
Well, I'm glad you did. I think we're agreed. I think The Bear takes it. I think Last of Us is a really great show, and I'm
It
really
is
looking forward to
100%.
season 2. And I think it's going to be an important show for this kind of TV. But The Bear is just a phenomenon, and it does a lot of things right, and it's so unique and interesting, and I think well worth it. But the real question is, now that it has taken the 2023 award, is it better than Severance? That's the question.
Because so what we're doing is we're taking winners of previous years and we make them fight each other.
That's good.
And
Yeah, explain it.
this year's winner has to beat whatever the historic champion is.
Yes, and currently
So
the historic champion is Severance, which was also the year winner for last year. Severance, the sort of sci-fi drama about going to work and having like an in-work and out-work brain, where you can when you're out of work you can't remember anything in work, and when you're in work you can't remember anything out of work. It's just fucking brilliant. I'm not going to tell you much more about it because you just got to go watch that show. It's so good.
Go watch that show. Go do the thing. Go get the Apple promotion on twitch.tv right now.
Yeah.
And then with your 3 months of free Apple, go watch Severance.
Or wait till January where season 2 comes out and watch season 1 and 2 back to back.
Oh, that'd be good. That'd be good.
Yeah.
Okay, I rewatched Severance recently.
Mm.
And I just want to be clear. Mary was watching it for the first time, and I found it hard to let her just like leave the room. You know what I mean? She was watching it in the living room, and I was like, "Oh, I've seen this before. I don't need to see this." And then I wouldn't leave.
Yeah.
Because it's such a fucking good show. And I'd forgotten so many parts of that show. Do
I need
you remember
to
the Waffle
rewatch it.
Party?
I do remember the Waffle Party, yes.
I didn't remember what happens straight after the Waffle Party.
I'm going to be
Yeah.
rewatching it before season 2 comes out. But honestly, that show redefined TV shows for me. I said it when I reviewed it, but I haven't felt that way since I watched the first season of Westworld. And when I watched the first season of Westworld, I had no expectations going into it whatsoever. And so it was so good, it blew me away from an absolute standing start. I already knew that Severance was supposed to be good when I went into it, but bloody hell did it absolutely demolish any kind of expectations I had.
Yeah. And that cliffhanger, like, it hasn't left me. That's what I remember strongest from the show, is how it ends.
There's just moments where every now and again you think, oh, and there was another hanging thing, and another hanging thing. Like, there's so many things left dangling, ready to go.
Yeah. So, I can't wait for Severance in a way that I am. Look, right? Season 3 of The Bear's out. I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to say the same thing when season 2 of Severance comes out.
Day one, I'll be in my seat,
Yeah.
ready to go.
Yeah. 100%. Like,
I'll be
if
so
I have
upset that
plans,
I have to watch it week to week.
if I have plans, I'm going to cancel them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's how good a show it is. So, yeah, I think Severance remains for me the all-time reigning champion of
I agree.
Bunyip Award winners on television category.
I agree. I think Severance takes it. I think The Bear is good. I think I'll eventually watch season 3. But like you, I've been watching The Boys. I've been watching The Bear season 3. So, but we'll come back to it. So Severance is our reigning champion for television, but that doesn't take anything away from the fact that The Bear has won Best TV Show for 2023. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
The trophy
to The
will
Bear.
be in
Well
the
done.
mail. All right, we're going to move on to our next section. Actually, it's 9 o'clock, so let's take a brief break. And when we come back, we'll do games, movies, and the Netflix randomizer. Stick around. We'll see you in a bit.
See you in a bit.
Nomt is very annoyed that you didn't pick Last of Us.
I
didn't pick
know.
Last of Us.
I know. Oh well.
Oh well. It is good. It is good. In another year, it would have taken it, I think.
Yeah. No. I thought about it a really long time, and I was like, I do like The Last of Us, but I like one moment of The Last of Us more than the rest of it, Whereas with the bear, I like 4 or 5 moments more than the rest of it. And I thought that mattered. But I think it is like there is this thing, right, where it's like if there's more of a show, does that work for it or against it? I think often it works against it, but I think season 2 of The Bear worked in its favor.
Well,
and it sounds like season 3 might work against it when we eventually watch it.
You say that, but you put kidding in twice. So
okay, but the first kidding we never actually reviewed properly. And then because we never recorded the first episode of the podcast.
Oh, it's true. It isn't a real podcast episode. It was just a live thing. Yeah.
All of our recordings start in January 2019. You and I only talked about kidding in the first ever episode, and that was stream only. Which, unless you've archived it, it's lost to time, baby.
I think it is lost to time.
Yeah.
So it starts with the next one, does it? It starts with March.
What are you talking about? Oh, our podcasts, our audio recordings.
Yeah.
I think they start around May or June.
So there isn't recorded us talking about Aloha.
Good point. I don't think so.
This is definitely something we could look up. Well, we'll look it up on the break. We'll be back in like 5 minutes, guys. Have a lovely break. Go grab yourself some water. It's absolutely boiling out at the moment. And we'll be back in a sec.
Bye.
Expensive whale hunts. You're not going anywhere, boy. You're going to the pit. Hold on. The foreign diplomats. The foreign diplomats.
It's like we're holding hands.
Beautiful. It's like we're holding hands next to the penis river. Welcome to the gay tricks. I can't wait to be in you.
Jamie, can you give me gay sex?
Grease me up! I'm going in!
Breeding.
Sir, please.
Culture.
God, this goo. There's so much goo.
It was like cry edging.
Oh no.
Breeding. Culture.
Stop saying breeding.
Stop saying breeding, please.
Breeding.
That's what we really needed, an image of groundkeeper really having an orgy.
Well, have you ever seen?
No. Never. No.
You spend time with your chosen bird, speaking to her and letting her I'll shit myself live on air.
You wait till you see my Jamie pic.
What does that
Wait.
Filth. Utter filth. That was the most they got, was that the horse had a French accent.
This map shows the entire Louvre area.
Yeah.
The Louvre area.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I live down in the that way, like northeast, south, east, west, southeast.
Yes.
And now everything's on fire. Oh!
Mom's shagging your dead son's wife.
Sylvan,
What?
why have you set these poor people on fire?
Everything from Toulouse to the Rue de Loire. Leave. Fucking. Most convenient.
Okay.
What are you doing with all these boats, Sylvan?
Vibing.
Threatening.
Can you vibe somewhere else?
Oh, you sweet summer child.
The police have done nothing. They've not cordoned this area off or anything.
What the hell did we build over there?
What's going on here, mate? What's happened? What's happened there? Who are these people? No one has come to this. Everything from Doulalère is
Oh no.
Battery.
Don't.
James! James!
Turn all train off. Right? Let's just sit silently in the dark.
James, what have you done?
The train just went.
I know you
Hello,
like a little
everyone.
chit,
We're
like a little
back.
chit chat.
We're back. We're just watching Jonas inject himself. So I'd bring
Yeah.
you back to this moment.
Just remember that this perk is for subscribers only. So if you're not a subscriber, can you just close your tab? Just close the tab, please. Thanks.
It's very interesting that the current best ever game is the first game that won it. And
Because it's never beaten Disco Elysium.
nothing's surpassed Disco Elysium since.
Interesting.
Hmm.
It's. I mean, you know, I never. It doesn't stop being talked about. Is the problem?
I think it's got a good chance of keeping its crown.
Oh dear, that tells me a bit too much. Into your mindset, boy.
and then films. Current winner is the film that you favorite film ever.
Yeah, that sounds about right for me.
And the best random Netflix movie. Oh wow. What's even the point of having that conversation?
Is it still Howl's Moving Castle?
Surprisingly, yes. After such gems as Stree and Surge.
What's like frustrating is like there are good films on Netflix, right? Like there are
Oh, yeah.
critically acclaimed, great films on Netflix, and it's just that we get to watch them once every 3 years.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
the randomizer will pick one every
Yeah.
3 years, 4 years at this rate.
4 years, yeah.
You know, the statistic gets worse every week we don't draw a new good film.
Yeah. Every month we don't draw a good film. It's 1 month further since we drew a good film.
Yeah, pretty much. May the odds forever be against our favour. Right.
Yeah.
I am ready to rock and to rumble.
Okay.
And review.
Hello and welcome back to this, the most glamorous and important of nights, the Bunyip Awards. We've just given you the best ever television show and the best television show of the year. And now we're moving on to games. And this year, well, last year, I guess, 2023, was a pretty fun year for games. There's some pretty crazy new things on that list, which I really liked. Jonas, what did you review?
Yeah, so the games that I reviewed last year are... January, I started the year with Yakuza Like a Dragon, then Hi-Fi Rush, then Wild Hearts, then Metroid Prime Remaster, then Dredge, then The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, followed by Final Fantasy XVI, A Space for the Unbound, Baldur's Gate 3, Storyteller, Cocoon, and Ghost Trick Phantom Detective.
A lot of good stuff. And I started with Darkest Dungeon, then Marvel Spider-Man Remastered, Atomic Heart, The Case of the Golden Idol, Shadows of Doubt, The Good Life, Dave the Diver, Sims 4, Book of Hours, Starfield, Ooblets, and I finished up with the board game QE, which is not eligible, even though it's on that list. And so we picked our favourites of that year, and it was difficult, I have to say, at least from my list. But the nominees for this year are, Jonas, what have you nominated?
I have nominated A Baldur's Gate 3.
And I nominated The Case of the Golden Idol. Jonas, tell me, why did you pick Baldur's Gate 3?
Yeah, sure. So, quick, like runners-up highlights. Hi-Fi Rush. That is a game that's going to stay with me for a very long time. It's a really amazing game. It's the writing of Futurama with rhythm, action, and fun level design, and like goofy characters and storytelling. It was shadow dropped, that is to say that it was released with no marketing, no trailers, no announcements whatsoever. It was just dropped on the day of release, and it blew people away. And it was a game that did critically well, commercially well. It blew people out the water. It had a banging soundtrack. And then, despite it being one of the most successful games ever to come out of that studio, and one of the biggest accolades that Microsoft had in its collection at the time, Microsoft decided to shutter the studio because they're bastards. So really sad about what happened to that team and that studio. They didn't deserve that, especially given the success that they'd managed to garner. So just, rest in peace, Hi-Fi Rush and Tango Gameworks. I hope you guys are doing well. That year we also had Tears of the Kingdom. So for me, I think it was really, Game of the Year was really drawn between Tears of the Kingdom and Baldur's Gate 3, just because they are both technical marvels that are these triple A, kind of 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 success video games on their respective platforms. Tears of the Kingdom absolutely blew people away in terms of the creativity it let people have with its fusing system and its ability to solve problems using a physics engine, just a fully formed world that just responded to however you interacted with it. Not to mention the actual kind of world and story and all of those elements. But the game that absolutely took it home for me was, in the end, Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3 is special in, I think, so many kind of ways. For one, it's the first time D&D has been so well adapted to a video game. And by well adapted, I mean adapted with so much freedom, with so much the writing takes into account so many of your options and so many of the different ways that you might go in and want to explore that world, that it feels like a genuine simulation of what it would be like to have a dungeon master kind of supporting you just throughout the entire game. Its story basically allows you to take as many different routes as you want. It has a very fixed story in its Act 1, 2, and 3 structure, and it really is trying to get you through a campaign book. But if you kill certain NPCs, the story finds a way around. If you ignore certain prompts, the world finds a way around. If you just spit in the face of all the logical decision making that you can do in that game, the world will still let you explore it and still let you see those decisions through to their natural conclusion point. It's incredibly well performed, just from the fact that it's a game with sort of 250 unique voice actors, each of whom were all mocapped for their characters. So while the characters aren't overly animated just because they kind of have to stand in front of the camera and talk, what they are is that they are alive and breathing in that space. They obviously move with their words and kind of everything is well supported through the mocap. But it just means that you don't have a bunch of Bethesda talking heads for a 145-hour RPG experience. It's adapting D&D in the sense that you really do, you get to create your own character, you get to pick the class, you get to pick how your character talks and deals with different problems. The dice rolling system is just, it's exactly what you want from a D&D game, in that, you roll dice to succeed and fail at different things. But because the game accommodates for failure at so many points, it's a game that I suppose actually similar to Disco Elysium. Failure, you can fail forward, you can still fail and move through scenarios, you can still fail checks and rolls, and the world will still give you an offer when you fail, rather than just taking offers off the table for you and constantly forcing you down the worst possible route. And I just think it's a great world. It's a great game. This is a great D&D campaign to play. It does some things completely by the book and completely tropey, but it has other surprises in there that make it so that if you're a D&D beginner, then obviously then this will be exciting for you and accessible, because it's using some of the traditional tropes. But if you're an advanced player and you've been playing D&D all your life, there are still some really fun surprises and twists and interpretations of the world and its lore that kind of let you really jump in and be surprised and kind of like find your own answers to like some of the questions in this world. And it's, of course, you know, if you haven't heard of Baldur's Gate 3 today, then something's wrong on your end, because commercially and in terms of the marketing and the commercial success of this game, it's absolutely blown out the waters. You know, it is winning those awards worldwide. It's, you know, its music is winning its awards, its performances are winning its award, its actual gameplay and design is absolutely being celebrated worldwide. And this is just absolutely put Larian on the map for like anything that they want to do in the future. It's skyrocketed their studio into like a point of fame, but also just like respect. People really love how this studio tackled this work and looked after its staff in the creation of it, which I think is important in a world of like horrible crunch and layoffs and, you know, people working really hard on a game only to have their studio closed. Baldur's Gate 3 has really paved the way for people in terms of like what success looks like, and I'm just very proud of everything it's done. Jamie,
Nice.
what about you and your pick? So you picked Case of the Golden Idol. What are your thoughts, Jamie, on your pick?
My thoughts. Well, so I had an interesting list because I had some of like truly some of the best games I've ever played, and maybe one of the worst games I've played in a very, very long time. A special shout out to Atomic Heart. Just truly dreadful. Never touched that game. But the others on this list are pretty great, I think. Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered, like just an excellent like action adventure game. Shadows of Doubt, what a crazy game! Like a procedurally generated murder mystery game that actually genuinely makes you feel like a detective. What a crazy thing that they've built. Dave the Diver, like everyone was just absolutely bonkers about that game. Book of Hours, such a brilliant style to it. Ooblets, like I now have a metal ooblet in my living room because of that game. But I picked Case of the Golden Idol because the Case of the Golden Idol to me is a really, really cool, interesting phenomena in that it is not just a game that I think in itself is very, very innovative, but it's a game that exists because of learning lessons from other games. This game is a sort of detective game where you go into an area and you click on things and it gives you words about those things, maybe descriptive words or nouns or things like that. And then you're given like a Mad Lib style book where you've got to put those words in to solve usually a murder. And this game, it's just the pinnacle of so many things that we've talked about as like absolute favorites on this podcast over time, right? It is the pinnacle of that, like learning the environment and learning the systems to solve a puzzle kind of game, right? You've got like Outer Wilds, the Obra Dinn, like those kind of games where you have to sort of understand something about the environment to succeed in the puzzle. It has puzzles that failing at the puzzle teaches you more about how the puzzle works. It has a really like interesting, dark, twisting, turning story that as you go through, you start to realize that, oh, you didn't pay attention to something back then. You heard something about this guy's name, but you can't remember exactly what. And now it's vitally important, and you've got to go back and you've got to look at things with fresh eyes and bring that back to your puzzles towards the end. It has 2 DLCs which get harder and harder and like more interesting and more interesting. This game, I think, it looked at all the things that came before it, all of the exceptional examples of its genre before it, and it said, and it just took all of those lessons and it formulated them into just an exceptional piece of art. And I think that, like, as far as puzzle games go, this now is like one of the first I think I would recommend to people. I think that it really would give you a jumping off point to say, well, if you like that, here's a bunch of other games that I can recommend you based on the bit you like the most about that game. I was blown away by it. It was a game that every time I finished it, I wanted to get back into it. I wanted to, like, every time I finished a level, I wanted to get back in. I wanted to be solving the next thing as quick as possible. And I, as soon as they announced the sequel, I was like, I need that in my life because I can't believe that this game is so short for how good it is. Jonas, I don't think you'd played it before I nominated it. What did you think of it?
I loved it. I thought it was a good puzzle game. Like Mary and I took the liberty of we sat down next to each other and kind of played it together. And I think we knew a little bit about the premise, but we knew nothing about how those scenarios would actually unfold. And so we didn't fully understand the full gameplay loop yet. And then I think we sat there, and I think it maybe took us 3 sessions or something, 3 2-hour sessions. I don't know how long it took us to play the game, but we enjoyed sitting and kind of clicking through these vignettes and sort of sitting there. I think the one that comes to mind the most is there's a mansion house, and you can go to the 4 corners of this house. And some of the key elements are right, people work here, but there are also guests visiting, and they're having dinner, but the people who work here have motivations. And trying to find everything and understand it and try and pass it through your head okay, so if that happened first, or if they're motivated by this, or wait a second, they had that letter in their pocket and we didn't know who it was from. But now I think with all the information, we can pretty much surmise that it must have been sent by this person, which means they have the following motives. Okay. And sitting there and doing that. And I think that was, it's just genuinely a highlight of what this game is. It's just sitting down and figuring it out.
That level also is a very good example of that it does well with that building complexity idea that each level has its own new things it brings to it, and you can solve a lot of the puzzle by just the things in the level. But that level has a lot of moments where someone by their relationship to someone else, but you don't know their name, or you know their name but you don't know their relationship to someone else, and you have to start thinking back to relationships you'd seen in earlier levels and how that makes sense in time, because each level is a bit further along in time, and start realizing, I've got to extrapolate outside of just what I can see, but what I can remember and my understanding of this as a world, which is really clever.
Yeah, and I often found that information wasn't necessary for a solution, but it supported a satisfying narrative that was optional. You don't have to know the story of any game you play ever. But often it's more satisfying if you do invest in that story.
Or it would help you confirm it in your head. So you could get the answer, but you wouldn't be sure of it unless you remembered the narrative. And if you remember the narrative, you go, this guy's that guy's grandfather. That confirms that I'm right.
That makes more sense, yeah. In particular, there's a particular murder that happens in the last level of the main game before any of the DLCs, where I was I can't believe he did that. It's a character that you're what? You really? And you end up actually, you get giddy about seeing this character develop in that way, because you've seen everything that came before. Really satisfying to that end. It has 2 DLCs. I have only started one of the DLCs. So I've not completed those.
The DLCs are, I would say, vital for that game. They're the main game is a really satisfying game, but it ends at maybe the sort of midpoint at where they get complexity, right? It says this is pretty complex, but here's where we're ending. The 2 DLCs are for people who are I love this game and I want to see what they can do. And by the time you get to the end of the second DLC, there's this whole mechanic with in one scene being able to look at 3 times of day. So you're going backwards and forwards throughout a day, and the way the way that they use subtleties and intricacies of the systems, that it's so efficient in its puzzle in that they can use almost nothing and you can imply so much from it. It's just so clever. I haven't felt that way since Obra Dinn, and I am desperate to feel that way again, to feel that rush.
Yeah, I think Obra Dinn is for me the peak of any other game that does what this game does. letting you come to your own conclusions, and then getting that rush of like dopamine when you find out you're correct, when you find out that you've not only like sifted through the information, but proven you've understood it, and proven that you kind of understood the singular application of the facts. And I think it's always really satisfying when a game lets you do that, and lets you do it like really succinctly.
But it is up against a game with plenty of puzzles. It's up against Baldur's Gate 3, which I played. I had always intended to play it, but I like made the jump into playing it after you selected it for your game, and I've hit about, I think Steam says, I've hit 80 hours exactly. Apparently, I finished on the 80-hour mark. Bam, done.
Yeah, you refuse to play anymore.
Yeah. And yeah, I've been loving it. I think it's I played Divinity 1 and Divinity 2, the two games that came before this in terms of the games that Larian made, and you can see a lot of that DNA in Baldur's Gate 3. Like, a lot of the systems are very similar, but I think that it feels just like a really polished experience. This is a studio that just knows what they're doing and really understands this kind of game. Like you say, it's really genuinely impressive how often you can get into a situation. Like, I've played a lot of RPGs. I really love RPGs. I love, like, especially Bethesda RPGs. I really love. But one of the things that always irks me about those games is getting into a situation and going, I know they don't have a solution for this, right? I know that they don't have an answer for if I come at it from this angle. I know I've come at it from a weird angle, and I know that I'm not going to get anything special for that. And the regularity with which Baldur's Gate 3, if you do something weird, it has something for you. It's like Stanley Parable levels of like predicting what you're going to do. Like, it just has an understanding of the player base and what kind of things you might get up to. And I think that's probably its most satisfying trait is like you say, feeling like a real DM that can react to you. That's it's just so satisfying in that game. I think
it's little things, right, where it's like in any other video game, if you were supposed to get a request reward, you'd have to complete the quest, and then the person would give you the item, and that item would be important. But in Baldur's Gate, it's like you've always got the option of, like, one, like lying about completing the quest and getting the item, or two, pickpocketing the person because it's just in their inventory and taking the item. 3, killing the person and taking the item. And like 4, finding some like other like angle to the story that says, I don't want to complete the quest. I actually want to help the evil person, but complete their objective. And that's a incomplete antithesis to what you want. And the game didn't tell me I can do that, but I'm just a naughty boy, so I'm just going to do it. And the game being like, and that NPC just being like, oh, so you're fucking over the good guys. Great. That's lovely. I actually have voice lines for that. Yeah. And you're just like, oh, I didn't think the game would respond to my decisions in this way. And that's really satisfying.
We started a playthrough where we're intentionally going to play as the most evil bastards. Like, at every possible opportunity, we're going to try and make the absolute evilest decisions. And this is much of a spoiler, so because it's right at the beginning of the game, so I'll say it. But at the beginning of the game, you meet a guy called Will, who's a warlock, and he's defending like a druid sort of base, like a druid enclave kind of place. And we got into this fight, and the fight is basically people defending the place, or like people trying to get into the place, Will, and a bunch of goblins. And we said, is it possible that we can make everyone die in this fight? Will, the defenders, the goblins, everyone. And we did. And we managed to kill a guy who is, I know from playing a lot further in my single player save file, a fairly important part of the game. Like, he's a guy with hours of dialogue and whole storylines. And we were just like, I'm going to kill him pretty much immediately. In my single player save file, I killed a character called Karlak pretty much immediately upon meeting her. And everyone I've said I've done that to has gone, she's the best character in the game. And I've gone, not to me. She's not in my game. She just doesn't appear. And yeah, you like, if you're watching the live stream, you can see Jonas's angry face at this. But that's one of the interesting things about this game is I don't think I've had a bad experience because I killed a character everyone loved. I've had a different experience. I've spent more time with other characters, right? I have a different path through this game than other people, and I think that's just a really clever, endearing side of it, especially when it's playing with a property that people really love, like D&D, and are used to having quite a lot of control over. So to be able to give you that kind of feedback is really, really interesting. I think gameplay wise as well, it's really smooth. It's really, I think it takes a lot of the thinking out of D&D, which I think it takes a lot of the stuff that people dislike about D&D out of D&D. You don't spend any time doing maths, and you don't spend much time thinking about spell slots or things like that in any real depth. You just get to do. You just get to think about the environment and the fun stuff, exploding barrels, like that. You were saying about there's usually a different way of solving a puzzle. Basically, in Act 3, every time anyone gives me a quest and it points to a house, I find a way to get onto the roof. Because I'm like, there's got to be a way to get in from the roof. And the game just lets you do it. The game goes, usually, yeah, there is a way to get in through the roof. I really like Baldur's Gate 3. I think... What's your gut feeling on what's feeling? Are you swinging entirely to Baldur's Gate 3, or is there anything at all that says that Case for Golden Idol could take it, or Case of the Golden Idol could take it?
I think if you wanted to talk about efficient game design, then I would say Case of the Golden Idol does have that. It does more with so much less. But Baldur's Gate 3 just does more. It does more, and it achieves not just I would say it never has a singular dopamine delivering puzzle solving or aha moment that I think Case of the Golden Idol does. But for me, it was just every quest, every conversation, every bit of performance, all the music, all the plot twists, all the the Guardian character and what they're all about and what they're trying to achieve, and this whole arc, and building my RPG character, but also having flexibility to respec my character, and completing quests and not quite knowing the outcome of those quests, and then later going on Wikipedia and discovering that there were 27 different outcomes and I've only seen one of them, and talking to people and just having so many conversations with people that are fun and exciting about all the different angles at which other people have loved Baldur's Gate 3. There's so much more of a culture around it that I've fallen in love with, and that has reinforced how much I like the game. And that's really hard to dismiss.
I think that's fair, and I think that it will win it. But what I will say is that I personally have had more fun per minute playing Case of Golden Idol than I have playing Baldur's Gate 3. And I think that Baldur's Gate 3 gives 80 hours more, hundreds and hundreds of hours of really great content. But I did find that quite often I would end the game at a quieter point or in between two major story beats, and I wasn't hyped to go back. I would boot it up, and eventually I would come to something where I was like, oh, this is pretty cool, but I would have a lot of wandering around sort of houses and shit kind of thing. And that's not a problem of Baldur's Gate inherently, I think, but I think it does have some of the rough edges of the genre that are just inherent to the genre. Right, it has the problem of wanting to scratch every corner in a world of 30 billion corners, and so you can end up sort of feeling I left Act 2 and a character was really sad at me because I hadn't solved a problem I didn't even know I could solve, and that didn't make me feel good, right? That made me feel like I had done something wrong because I hadn't scratched every corner in this 1,000-hour game, and I don't think that's inherently a Baldur's Gate problem. I think that's a massive open world RPG problem, but it is a problem in Baldur's Gate. And I think that the Case of the Golden Idol for me had no bad moments. It was exactly what it was, and it was an exceptional version of that. And I think that inevitably Baldur's Gate is a technical achievement and an absolute marvel, and it needs to be recognized for that. I think my preferred game of the two is Case of the Golden Idol.
Fair enough. It's interesting as well. Just there was I did have some moments where I wasn't loving Case of the Golden Idol, and it came down to I can't solve this fucking puzzle. Like me just sat there getting it wrong, and then getting it wrong, and then getting it wrong, and me readdressing the facts and going, okay, but this must be true, and then putting it in and being told I'm wrong, and me and Mary just having this frustration point where I think we genuinely spent 15 minutes being told we were wrong about something, and then we turned the game off. We were just like, we'll just have to sleep on it. We're just gonna have to come back to it and sleep on it,
It's interesting because we talk about the rough edges of the genre for Baldur's Gate 3, but those are the rough edges of the genre for the puzzle genre, right? Like if it's too easy, it's not interesting, and if it's too hard, it's it's a problem. There's a game I'm going to talk about in next podcast called Abduction that I played recently by the Cyan guys who made Myst. And I think that fundamentally taught me why sometimes getting the puzzle being impenetrable is good and why sometimes it's bad. And I think what it comes down to is, do you feel like the dealing with the puzzle is absolute busy work, or do you feel like you're just solving the puzzle and you just can't figure it out? Because if it's all lean, it's all puzzle, and you just can't work it out, when you solve it, you'll be like, fuck yeah, I did it. If the puzzle is busy work, if the puzzle is like a lot of wandering around, like turning a cog on one side of the room and then turning a cog on the other side of the room over and over again or whatever, by the time you finish it, you'll go, this is my reward for the 1,000 hours of work I did. And I think that where, for me, Case of the Golden Idol, it did, and this is personal, and I'm not saying that the way you felt about it was wrong, but the way for me that Case of the Golden Idol softened that was that you were always solving the puzzle. You never spent time having to turn cogs on either side of a room or something.
Yeah, no, there's something very good about these interface only puzzle games, right? Where it's like you can snap between the thing that solves the puzzle and the thing that teaches you the puzzle at the press of a button, and there's actually very little 3D exploration. I think that's the thing you just described is very much a problem of I have to wait for the character, whether I control it in first person or whether I'm clicking on a bird's eye view map. I have to wait for something to interact with the world to turn it into the world state that I need it to be in to solve the puzzle. And that's where the busy work comes from. But having a game that's just right, here's a page, fill it in. You want to put the page away? Page is gone. What do you want to look at? You want to look at this? Here it is. Map? Here it is. Characters? Here it is. All the information you need. One button. And just being able to be right, absorb, regurgitate.
Yeah, if you were a savant, you could look at this and turn up, and before you even click on anything, you could solve the puzzle. That kind of deal.
Yeah.
And that's what's appealing about Obra Dinn, right? You're presented with a book, and they right at the beginning of the game, they go, you could fill in the whole book if you like. Go for it.
I mean, it's the same satisfaction to Outer Worlds as well, right? Where it's here's a world. Solve the world. Solve the state of this 3D environment. And you are moving backwards and forwards, but if you want to go anywhere in Outer Worlds, it takes you 3 seconds. It doesn't take you long to get to a destination.
And you very quickly learn that if you understood the answer to this world, you could just do it. You could just solve it. And I think that's it. I think it's not feeling like you. I think it's not feeling like you're spending all the time solving, or you're spending all the time doing busy work to solve, but you are just always puzzling. That's the fun of it. But yeah, for me, going away and sleeping on it is an inherent part of puzzle games, and I quite like that. but I do understand how that is a rough edge of the genre.
Yeah, I think it's because I'm the kind of person who I'd like to be we did it. Let's go to bed. What a satisfying way to end the night. Rather than pencil scratchings on the wall, and I'm yeah, fuck it.
I'm just imagining you and Mary laying in bed, and she's like, "Are you feeling okay, Jones?" Shut the fuck up! I'm still thinking about it. I hate you.
There's no need to quote me like that, James, okay? There is no need for that. There's another aspect of Baldur's Gate 3 which I haven't really talked about, but it's the companions. I like video games where you have companions, where you have party members, and they have a narrative, and you are encouraged to explore that narrative, and they grow. Their gameplay grows with their story. Yeah. So you've only entered Act 3, which means you wouldn't really have that's when all the character conclusions are opened up to you. but most of the characters have these like left or right forks in their road at the end of their story.
I've had one with
And
Shadowheart, yeah.
yeah,
Kind of,
Shadowheart's one's quite early. But she does have a little moment in Act 3 as well. But you get these massive fork moments where it's like, I'm going to define what this party member is for like the rest of their life now. And I'm going to define whether or not they're driven by like greed or charity, or like, are they driven by revenge or forgiveness? You know, are they driven by, you know, this negative emotion or this like rather, you know, this softer kind of more like forgiving human emotion? Which one do I want them to be? Do I want them to be like the killing powerhouse or like my friend? You know, that sort of thing. What do I need right now? And I think there was something very satisfying about having those conclusions, because within themselves, those are really satisfying narratives. You know, in amongst the whole, let's save the world and, you know, kill the big bad. I just found that, yeah, overall, I found Baldur's Gate to have lots of little stories that I like hold on to and really remember. And each of those stories, while memorable and powerful to me, also had their own endings. Like, also had endings that I don't know about. You know, Mary's meeting characters and doing things that I never got in my game, and that's like quite interesting. Like, it makes me want to go back to it and explore it more.
Yeah, I think that a thing I found a bit disappointing about the companions in that game is how it's kind of difficult to, because you build a gameplay style around. I mean, maybe this is just the way I've played the game, and I do intend to play a different playthrough again at some point. But you build a sort of gameplay style around your companions and how they work, right? I have a cleric and a fighter and a mage, and that's how I play my fights. Now I understand how that works, and I've given them the right gear for this and built them in certain ways. Building, because they play a double duty of being an important story person but also an important sort of mechanical person, when you end up in situations where a character is like, you should be bringing Will into this scene, and I'm like, no, because if we get into a fight, what the fuck's he gonna do, kind of thing. That kind of disappointed me in a way that, like, again, it's kind of inherent to the genre, but it was that little thing that it did that it bothered me, that it sort of both sort of suggested you should scratch every corner and do every conversation and have every companion story, but also you definitely can't and you definitely shouldn't. And I think it wants you to come to terms with the fact that you shouldn't do everything on one playthrough, and that you should have other playthroughs that experience the world differently, but also encourage it, like, sort of goes, you've missed something, haven't you? You've missed something, lol. I really love the characters in that game. I think they're really interesting and really, really vibrant. I just kind of wish the game would leave me alone a bit about the ones that I hadn't brought with me, and just maybe have like an end screen at the end of the game that says, and next time bring Will with you.
I swapped party members frequently.
Okay.
I role played a leader who made sure that everyone got a slice of the action. So if I had Lae'zel, then I probably wouldn't have Karlach, and if I had Karlach, I probably wouldn't have had Lae'zel. I never met Gale, so that actually meant that Will was like my only spellcaster most of the time. And then, you know, Astarion was really useful because he was the rogue, you know, and I needed to lockpick things. And so I got quite annoyed when I didn't have Astarion in the party, but it forced me to like be like, right, what would I do if Astarion were here? Like, or do I need to get better at Dex just so I have a chance of lockpicking something and things like that? And I'm trying to remember who the other party members are now, but they've all gone completely from my head. Obviously Shadowheart as well as a cleric. So if I didn't have Shadowheart, like, I'd have to have someone else as like having some backup healing options, or I'd like stock up more on potions and things like that. And I did that because that felt right for my character. It felt right for me to like bring people in, not just for their narrative moments, but also just because like I was a leader who would spend time with everyone equally, and I found that was quite fun and a challenge. It was a challenge for me to overcome, but I spent time solving that puzzle, solving that challenge by being like,
maybe that is the way the game wants you to do it, because you get in these weird situations. If you play the game the way I did, I imagined it like I was playing a D&D game where like I had my 3 friends, and every week we turned up and we played another session of D&D, and it's always the same 4 people because that's how a D&D campaign works. And then you'd go in and like Astarion would be like, So I need to have a really emotional conversation with you because I feel like we've gotten really close. And it's like, dude, I haven't spoken to you in months. Like, I don't really know who you are, but fine.
Yeah, and I think honestly that's just like I think because if you think of it as a game designer, it's like, well, what are you going to do? Punish the player for not taking Astarion? Like that would feel shitty. So it feels it's more jarring to have everyone act like you've been doing them the greatest favor on the planet, even though you've been ignoring them. But I think from a game design point, it probably comes from, well, actually, let's not punish the player for ignoring you. Let's just pretend.
Or encourage people to do a second playthrough, right? Say to people,
oh,
right,
and
the
that
point
as
of
well.
this is that you're going to have another story when you go through. There's so many different character options. You can roll your character 300 different ways. Let's not have it that every character is constantly being like, and do my bit too. Instead, have them be like, in another life, we could have done something interesting. Maybe that'd be the way to go. But yeah. Anyway, I think Baldur's Gate probably takes the award just because I think it's an amazing technical achievement. But I wanted Case of Golden Idol to be listed here as my choice because I think it's an exceptional game and I cannot wait for the sequel. Do you agree with that?
I respect it. I'm looking forward to the sequel as well, and I'll give you a rewind when I finish the DLCs as well.
Smashing. I'm excited to hear how bloody angry they make you because I found the third DLC for that game intensely difficult.
Oh, yay.
So, Baldur's Gate 3 now needs to go up against our current reigning champion, which is the RPG Disco Elysium. So it's interesting having a smaller scale RPG versus the big beast of Baldur's Gate 3. I mean, I'm just going to put it out there. I think Disco Elysium should keep it. What's your opinion?
I think there's an arena to be built, and I think these two contenders could have a fair fight. I think they could.
Yeah.
I think Disco Elysium is older, and I think Baldur's Gate actually learned to I think it actually looked at Disco Elysium as a platform upon which to build its conversation tools and its and its exploration of like failing forward. Yeah, exactly. And I think Baldur's Gate is the one that's kind of I think culturally I think Baldur's Gate is the one that's maybe going to be celebrated longer and bigger. I think that's because it's got the D&D brand behind it. I think like the fact that it is the D&D game means that I think something's going to replace Disco Elysium for what it does eventually, and I think very little's going to replace Baldur's Gate 3 for like another like 20 years.
I distinctly disagree. I think that Disco Elysium is a cult art piece, and I think that people will in the future talk about other Larian games and be like they built on Baldur's Gate 3, and it's like or there's it's the new big D&D game. I think Disco Elysium stands alone. I think Disco Elysium is the like the Obra Dinn, right? The Papers, Please, those kind of like those games that people talk about as a distinct point in time. That even if other games have come in like it, it is a distinct version of it. Because I have never played an RPG like Disco Elysium. Like it takes fun like recognizable mechanics and just mangles them in such a beautiful way that I'd never seen in any other way. And the storyline, the way it weaves its story is so unique. Like it's such an interesting, unique, distinct world in comparison to so many other things. And Baldur's Gate 3 is an incredible achievement, but it doesn't make me feel like that.
There's a moment in Disco Elysium that will always stay with me forever. And it's
the end credit.
+1. No, it's +1. Kim Kitsuragi trusts you. +3. Kim Kitsuragi really trusts you. And that, like, for that alone, I think Disco Elysium can hold its place in the arena. Because there is no party member like Kim Kitsuragi. There really isn't. There's no optional party member like fucking Kuno.
Kuno!
Kuno's gonna fuck you up, mate.
Kuno's gonna fuck you up. I like that game. I think people talk about that game independent of its mechanics, right? People still like use art from that game, quote that game in ways that like I think sort of feel independent of the game. Like I rarely actually see people quote the game anymore. I just see people like make memes out of the idea of Disco Elysium. I think it's a cultural touchstone in games now, and in a way that Baldur's Gate 3 probably will have a similar place, but I don't think it'll be the same.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
Right, we're going to move on to our last category, but that was Baldur's Gate 3 taking the year, but another incumbent keeping its throne in Disco Elysium. Okay, we're on to our final section, which is the movie section, and last year, we've had, again, some interesting things. There was a lot of watching things that did not come out in that year, but there was still some good stuff from that year, including the big duo, the big back-to-back. So I reviewed that year 3,000 Years of Longing, 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Tetris, Page 8, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, Asteroid City, My Half of Barbenheimer, Oppenheimer, No Hard Feelings, the 3 Wes Anderson shorts that were put up on Netflix, The Witch and The Killer. And Jonas, what did you do?
I started the year by watching Amsterdam, then I watched Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, then Sound of Metal, then Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Amongst Thieves, then Suzume, then Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, then Nimona, then Barbie of Barbie Harmer, Oppen Barbie fame, then Kiki's Delivery Service, then Hamilton, then the original, should I say, Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and finally, Uncharted.
And our actual nominations for the movie of the year were... I picked Oppenheimer. And Jonas?
I picked Hamilton.
Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton himself.
Absolutely.
All right, so I'm up first, and I'm talking about Oppenheimer. I had some great movies that year. My favourite director released Asteroid City, so I could have picked that. I thought it was excellent. A really, really interesting film. 3 Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri is just an incredible film. A really, really interesting look into slice of life. Obviously, the classic Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And even more Wes Anderson in the Wes Anderson shorts that went up on Netflix. They were excellent. But for me, the absolute standout of the year was Oppenheimer. And I did the Barbenheimer. I watched Barbie first, and then I watched Oppenheimer second. And no, the other way around. No, I watched Oppenheimer first, and I watched Barbie second. And Barbie was good, but Oppenheimer was a genuine experience. I watched it in IMAX with the incredible speakers and the enormous screen and everything, and just the experience of that film absolutely blew me away. It's a really compelling plot of the sort of difficulties between doing something incredibly awful like dropping an atomic bomb, and also the threat of feeling like your enemies could get it before you and they could use it for worse, whatever worse could be. This idea that you're working on fringe science that could destroy the entire world, and what that does to a group of people, and the way that America sort of wrestled with itself afterwards, and how it wanted to sort of, when it came to and it realized what the horrible things it had done, how it tried to sort of exorcise the people who had made it as scapegoats for their own sort of guilt. I think it handles all of those really complex ideas really, really well in just an excellent portrait of a single man's life. And I think it's one of the most beautiful films I've seen in just an incredibly long time. Their use of different frame formats and use of color to show the sort of change in time and perspective, the way that they use practical effects to create this sort of stellar views of particles colliding in nuclear bombs and things like that. It's it's a work of art and a real like just an absolute masterpiece in studying this kind of idea. So yeah, I think all the others, there were a lot of really great ones out there, but Oppenheimer for me just sat with me long after, almost probably to Barbie's detriment. I then had to go in to watch Barbie after that movie because it really hit me. Like after we saw it, I saw it with Laura, and afterwards we were going to go see Barbie with Beth, and Beth met us for a drink before we went to see it, and she was like all hyped because she was going to see Barbie, and Laura and I were still sort of a bit shell shocked from Oppenheimer. Yeah, I think that won the Barbenheimer matchup, and I think it's definitely my best film of the year, and something that will absolutely stick with me. Jonas, tell me why you picked Hamilton.
Yeah, okay, so just like some highlights from my year in particular, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is one of my favorite family films of all time now, like easily hands down. It's a film that I would happily rewatch over and over again. I think it's got two really fun, well-written villains that I, like a man in my 30s, appreciated. I think it like covers the theme of death and mortality and like you won't live forever in a really like kind of harrowing and honest but also kind of important way. Like it just tackles that subject well. And it was animated beautifully. I think it was just a really beautiful film, and I'd highly recommend it to anyone. And I think you don't need to care about any of the other Puss in Boots stuff. I think it's a great standalone film. Then later that film there was Suzume, which is an anime film directed by I think his name's Shinji Ikami, but I might be having that name mixed up. But Suzume, just beautiful. Every film by that director is normally just about like youth and lost experiences and like exploring the world around you and like getting to know like small communities and often like kind of experience that, you know, that magic of experiencing love for the first time. And Suzume just brought that to the forefront really well. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, an incredible sequel to Into the Spider-Verse. You know, this one was the one that brought us like 1,000 Spider-Mens from alternate dimensions and realities and had them like chasing each other across different dimensions. It had Hobie Jones as like Spider-Punk. It just had loads and loads of amazing scenes and like cinematic flourish, and it just the Spider-Man franchise, this Spider-Man franchise is currently like the gold standard of animation in cinema, but closely followed by Nimona, which also did an incredible job of looking beautiful but also telling a really amazing story about like identity, also with a character that is like very non-binary in terms of their gender and identity, so just really important representation there. I watched Barbie. That was great. That was a lot of fun. Still small quotes and references to Barbie in my everyday life now, in a very fun way. I watched Kiki's Delivery Service. That's like a Studio Ghibli original. That's like, you know, for some people, that's one of their big three. You know, when you've got your Howl's Moving Castle, your Totoros, your Princess Mononokes, you got Kiki's Delivery Service up there as well. And I also watched the original Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, which I just love. You know, but it's very of its time. But the reason I picked Hamilton is so it's a 3 hour. This is a 3 hour live stage production that you can watch the recording of. So this is a theatre show, but holy shit, is it an amazing theatre show. It's so complex, it's so bouncy, it's so fun, it's got so much so many different musical influences that like I don't really have the vocabulary to talk about because it was like my first exposure to any of those things. It's really multicultural. Like it's got so much diversity in its cast and in like the story it's trying to tell. It's educational. I don't know fuck all about Alexander Hamilton, but I watched this and now I know his full name is Alexander Hamilton. But there's a lot that Hamilton does well, and I can understand now why people celebrate it, why people listen to the songs on Spotify, why it gets quoted, why it gets like recommended year after year after year after year. And I just sort of needed to kind of acknowledge that in this way, by bringing it to this table and bringing it to this conversation. I recognize its influence. I recognize how powerful and fun it is and bouncy and and I loved it. I really did love it. I'm not one of these people who's got it on my favorite playlist and I'm listening to it every week, and I'm not quoting it every week, but I recognize that it has built that culture around it, and I totally understand why.
Yeah, I really liked it. In fact, it's the reason I originally got Disney Plus was because they had put the Hamilton musical up on it. And I remember us getting together, putting it on the TV, all of us sitting around and watching it. I think that what's really great about the Disney Plus version of it as well is that it's a really, they shoot it really well so that it still feels like a stage show, but it's more dynamic than that, and very interesting to watch, and you get to see all the best bits up close. I've actually seen Hamilton now in real life. I've seen the stage show of it, and I have to say that it was very enjoyable being in the room, but I had a better experience watching it on Disney Plus. And I think that that's a real hats off to it, because it's like you say, it's not just a stage show, and a really great stage show, but it's also the way that they have to stage it and shoot it for a TV audience, and I think it works really well for that. I think the music's great. I think it's a really, like you say, I can see why it was so popular. Like from watching it, and I'm not much of a musical person, I can come out of that and be like, oh yeah, I get why this took the world by storm, right? Yeah, no, it's pretty damn exceptional. And I think it was a real smart move on Disney to originally put it on their platform as like one of the openers for when they first released Disney Plus, right? Because it's something new that no one else was really doing in a decent way. I think that's really great. You watched Oppenheimer. We did the Barbenheimer sort of simultaneously. What did you think of Oppenheimer?
The word I've got for Oppenheimer is like reverence. I think it's the closest thing that I've had to I think religious experience is the wrong word, but I want to kind of bring that gravitas into the room, right? Where it's like,
it feels like being in a real big church, like a real beautiful church. Yeah.
And the word epic, it doesn't get misused with this film. There are moments in this film, and they are very distinct moments, but when those moments happen, they are, if you let them be, they are awe-inspiring. They are awesome. They are epic. They are jaw-dropping. They are just kind of stunning in their presentation and in what they do. I think the rest of the film for me was fine good. I think it was for me, I didn't really draw a lot, I think, from the story it was telling, or a lot of the kind of the cinematography in between those rather grand bits. But I think that kind of comes from me maybe not having the right frame of mind to appreciate it, or maybe just recognizing that films that tell historical stories don't actually touch me as much as films that are built for entertainment or fantasy, or kind of whisking you away to another world. I think I'm more readily open to accept those films, but the thing that makes me not like this film as much as I could or should are the same reasons why I don't really respond to films like 1917 or Dunkirk, films of military exploits, films of historical bomb, gun, survive, fight. These stories tend not to grasp me as much, and I think it's more in the subject matter than it is the execution.
It's interesting because Oppenheimer's not really about that. It's mostly about science and about a man sort of struggling with ego, right? There's very little actual violence in it.
But it doesn't have to be the violence aspect.
Yeah.
It's I'm using those words, but there are just films that I know I go in with a harder to impress mindset, and it often has to do with the setting and the tone that it's presented. And I think the setting and tone of Oppenheimer is one that I'm predisposed to not enjoying as much.
Okay, fair enough. Interesting. But the fact that it still had those epic moments that were able to bring you through, testament then to you being able to to get through something, because we was 1917 was one of our selected films 2020.
Yeah.
And so you like, did you feel like it stood out more in terms, like, did you feel like it was more approachable for you than 1917?
Yeah, I would say that it was definitely more approachable. The fact that I went to go see Oppenheimer at the cinema, but I did not go see Dunkirk or 1917, and I won't go see most war films in the cinema, like no matter how good they are, I just won't be interested in them.
Yeah, it's funny because it really doesn't feel like a war film to me. It's set during the war, but it doesn't feel like a war film to me. That's the thing.
And you're right in, like, it's not the same genre, but for me it's the same. It's a similar setting.
Right. Okay.
And I just know, I know for a fact that I am predisposed to, like, not liking some settings more than others.
Yeah, fair enough.
And that is just a setting that I will always quite honestly struggle with.
Fair enough. Well, Hamilton is partially set.
Yeah, but it's filled with rapping, flamboyant politics.
They should have had Oppenheimer rap for a bit.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if he had, like, bounced up on stage and said, like, "Drop in the bomb," like, you know, then there would have been something in there.
Could have made it better, like being in a church.
Yeah, the same way that the pastor gets up on stage and says, "Drop in the bomb."
All right, which one's going to take it then?
Jamie, I would like you to set the direction, like, of this vehicle, because one, I've had a lot of sway over the last two, and two, I'd like to acknowledge that I am unfairly predisposed to not loving Oppenheimer, but I recognize its cinematic achievement and the impact it has left on audiences that are not me.
I think Oppenheimer is one of the best movies made in the past few years, and I think that Hamilton is a good example of its genre, but Oppenheimer is genuinely one of the best things that has been in the cinema in a long time, and so I think that has to have it.
Okay, I won't argue with you. I felt that my film offering was fairly, like, middling. Like, I think I had three amazing animations in my year: Puss in Boots, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and Nimona.
Yeah.
But I also felt like those were all strong 8s, and I needed a 9.
Yeah.
And I just think that in terms of, like, very little challenges Hamilton in what it does, and it does it well.
No, I think Hamilton's good. I think Hamilton is a good example of, like, you know, like I said, it got me to sign up for Disney Plus. I think it's good. But Oppenheimer's doing something genuinely different, and I think that's to be, like, it's a director at the absolute height of his career doing, like, something that is exceptional.
Cool.
In a year of people doing that as well. But yeah. So Oppenheimer takes it for the year, but does it beat Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Fuck you.
I'm gonna put you out of your misery. I think Oppenheimer does beat Everything Everywhere All at Once, but I know that both of us like Everything Everywhere All at Once, and I know that you would pick Everything Everywhere All at Once. So if you want broad, total, like, Everything Everywhere All at Once, probably take it. But if you were to just ask me, Oppenheimer, I think would be a better film.
I can still watch Everything Everywhere All at Once and laugh and cry and, like, kind of whoop with joy and cheer at how much fun it's having with itself. And I think I can do that on, like, my 6th watching of it, you know, which is, like, just so weird and rare for a film or anything to make me feel and do all at once.
Yeah, I think it's, like, I remember being really shocked at how much I liked it, and, like, how intensely, like, how different it was for me. I think that the interesting thing about, like, why I would put Oppenheimer above it is that I went into Oppenheimer knowing what I was going to get, and I was still blown away by it. And I think Everything Everywhere All at Once for me had a lot of shock value in just how good it was from, like, nowhere. I had no expectations of it whatsoever. But that being said, it was all I thought about for the rest of the year. Like, it genuinely was one of the best films I have ever watched. and I think that it, like, you know, I'd be happy with either of those films being the best film ever in terms of our list, and so I think I'm more than happy for it to stay in charge.
Well, thank you, my good friend. I just to retort to a few comments as well. So you said it as well, actually. But like Hamilton is this war genre thing, right? And here's a really good distinction for you. If Hamilton were a no-nonsense movie that was like here's the drama about Alexander Hamilton, here's the serious story of Alexander Hamilton, I wouldn't give a shit about it. But it's because it's a bouncy, rappy, diverse, in-your-face, like it's a really, really, it's got so much attitude and edge.
So what you want is like a sort of laugh-a-minute World War II comedy.
You know how they did Romeo and Juliet, but they gave them guns, and it was like at like, you know, Latino petrol stations where they're having shootouts and things
What
like
you
that.
what you want is like 1917, but he's making slapstick jokes the whole time. Like it's a one shot, but he keeps tripping over things and going, oh, and like,
this war's not going so well, is it, buddy?
that bit where he gets chased by the Nazi soldier through the burning city. But he's like laying rakes out for him, so that he, like, when he steps on them like Sideshow Bob.
Yep, I want a bit of Benny Hill.
Sounds great.
And I need all. If you're making it, if you are a director making an historical war movie right now, just watch some Tom and Jerry, and just take some pages out of its book, for me.
All right, so that's the movies. We got Oppenheimer winning for this year, but Everything Everywhere All at Once retaining its crown. It's a year for incumbents. Everyone has held their place. Right, we're going to take a very short break, and then we're going to move on to the Netflix randomizer. I'll see you in a mo. I really need to pee. I'll be right back.
All right, I need to close my window.
Do you want me to leave the camera on, or?
You audience, you can watch me close my window. Right. It's fine. I turn on my fan as well. You can all see me in my shorts. I'm closing the window because if I leave my lights on and I have the window wide open, I'm so aware of like how many fucking moths and flies are gonna come into my room late at night, and I don't like that. I don't love insects. So I've brought the window to a bit, and I also closed the curtain just so it's like the light is less prominent, and if they do learn to fly through that window, they're gonna hit a bloody curtain, and they're gonna have to deal with that, which is at least gonna kind of slow them down by a few minutes. You have nets in all of your windows. Steltech, having a net in my window is the right answer, and I should probably just look them up on Amazon.
Who's a net?
A net is someone who catches flies for me by the window, and that's a full-time job.
With a tongue.
I haven't hired her yet.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But when I do...
Right. Are we ready to get back?
Yeah.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. And we're on to our final section of the podcast. And this one, no one has any dogs in this race. This is all about sheer random joy. We're moving on to the Netflix randomizer. How about I read the first half and you read the second half? How's that, Jonah?
All right.
Okay, so this year, our Netflix randomizer spat out at us Maria Bamford, Old Baby, Vermist, Barbie as the Princess and the Pauper, Coffee and Kareem, Magic Medicine, DTC Yukamuri Junjuhen from High and Low.
And after that, we had Super Senior Heroes, Sinister, Great Painters of the World, Joan Miro, Remastered, The Miami Show Band, Doctor, and Restless.
All right, so the way this worked is that we pick our favourite of the year, and then we see if that's better than our incumbent, and then we pick our least favourite, the absolute worst shit that we've been forced to watch, and see if that matches up to the incumbent. And at the moment, just for a reminder, our incumbent for best is Howl's Moving Castle, and our incumbent for worse is Jeff Dunham beside himself, which will be hard to beat. That came. Didn't that come in the same year as some actual right-wing propaganda?
What, the Smolensk or something?
Yeah.
The Polish or Russian conspiracy about plane crashing. Yeah.
And Jeff Dunham was still worse than that.
Yeah.
All right, so
in the fucking pits.
we need to pick our best of this list. And Jonas, what would you say? You look like you've got an idea of what you want. What do you want?
Jamie, will it surprise you that I was a really big fan of the 3 Japanese biker boys going to a hot spring and getting part-time jobs at the hot spring because they can't afford fuel or something, and then meeting up with other members of rival gangs? That was it. They're all literal gang members, and then they have to solve like an unrequited lover's quarrel and also like a strained relationship between mother and son while they're there at the hot springs, and they call upon their rival gang enemy / friends to help solve this problem, and also like spring like surprise marriage proposal in a romantic way that all goes beautifully well with musical numbers or something.
I really liked DTC Yukamuri Jinjo Hen from High and Low as well. I liked slowly dawning that this was the comedy spin-off of a larger series, and being like, and that we were supposed to know all these characters and we just didn't, and they would just like introduce some guys in like weird clothes and they'd be like, no fighting, okay, fine. Like, yeah, I thought that film was very, very good. How about we talk about some other things and then circle back round to it, because I can see we're both very excited by that film. I thought Maria Bamford Old Baby was very good. I thought it was a really weird, interesting take on a stand-up special. That's the one where she performs to different sizes of groups, so like just her in the mirror or her husband on the sofa, to like people on the street, to like, you know, an actual show. It was really interesting.
I remember enjoying it. I remember enjoying it partially because I felt like I'd been a victim to people like Tom Segura and Jeff Dunham and Sebastian Maniscalco for too long.
Yeah.
But I also do think it was genuinely fun. Like I do. Don't get. If I was asked to seek out better stand-up, I could. But but this was good comedy. This was fun. I wouldn't like hesitate to recommend it to someone. While I wouldn't necessarily think to recommend it to someone, if someone said, "Would you recommend I watch Maria Bamford Old Baby?" I'd be like, yeah. Actually, no, it's quite good. It's quite good.
What did you think of Super Senior Heroes?
One of the more competent like films that we've been forced to watch, but it did have so many moments of like, oh god, here's the continuity break, here's the how the fuck did that happen, here's the why did that character even exist. Like, it had a lot of those moments that didn't not make it fun, but I would say they did not make it good.
I think
great.
It was a nice amount of silly. I think that sometimes we see these films and they take themselves not seriously, because they all have like comedy moments, but like it definitely had an eye on itself as to being a kind of silly idea. Doctor was the one that ends with them all being crucified, right?
Hey, they get out the crucifixion, yes, and then his dad, the villain's dad, is in a suitcase that gets shot at or something and thrown down the stairs, and the whole film is a man who is like morally grey and stoic. Like, a woman argues with him for being too stoic, and he solves all of her
dumps him
problems
because he's too emotional. Because he's not emotional enough. Yeah.
But he then goes and solves her family's kidnapping problem by making morally grey decisions, like, I stole your kidneys, now you'll work for me. Only at the end of the film,
steals man's kidneys.
2 men's kidneys. He puts them in a bed, and they're both like assassins, or like, you know, they're both like underworld criminals.
There's like a whole comedy slapstick sequence where they have a guy dress up as a little girl, and they keep stealing kidneys over and over again.
Yes. And so that was a film that was a lot of fun, and I would put that like I think that may be second place for me this year on that
I
year.
I think that would be a good film to watch with some friends having a drink, because the speed at which that film like whiplash changed tone. Like you'd have a bit where like two people just having a chat, and then they open a door and you watch someone try to like drown a young girl, and then like
tires, yeah.
and then it just cuts to an entirely different like comedic scene of like people having slap fights and injuring each other's hands and things.
I was just
like,
gonna say, do you remember the storyline of we need to get this head of security to come into this building and we're gonna break his hands so that then when we go to fix his hands in surgery, we actually numb him and we cut off his thumb and he doesn't know that we've cut off his thumb because we've numbed his hand.
They put someone
and then we
else's
put him
thumb
in
on
a
it.
cast. We put a fake rubber thumb on him and put him in a
that's
cast so he doesn't know that his thumb's missing. And then we're able to use the thumb, give it to this twin assassin guy whose twin brother was murdered by the villain, so that the twin comes for revenge and helps us.
It's an insane movie.
Yeah.
But you're right. DCC Yukimori Ginger Hen from High and Low, I think, is probably our winner. It was just a good movie. It just genuinely was a good, fun movie. There was a few bits and bobs that sort of didn't pass translation, a few jokes that didn't really make sense in English, but for the most part, and a lot of references to a show that neither of us have ever seen. But other than that, it was pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. Now, Jamie,
Yeah.
I need you to make the first cut in this pie.
Well, we both know what the worst movie is.
What's the worst random Netflix movie of 2023 that you and I were forced to watch on this podcast, The Bunyip Review?
The worst movie on this list is Coffee and Kareem.
Is Coffee and Kareem. Oh boy, is it Coffee and Kareem.
Coffee and Kareem is racist, misogynistic. It's just not funny. It's so bad, and its lead actor is like an old SNL like legend, and they're just
Yeah, Ed Helms plays a police officer called Coffee, and Terrence Little Gardenhigh plays a angry black teenager boy called Kareem. The pun being coffee and cream and coffee, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, like, what is it? In the first, like, 30 minutes of the film, they're joking about how someone's going to butt fuck a child or something. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like there was some molestation joke and humor in there. It's a stupid, like, crime comedy thriller about them getting wrapped up in a crime that's, like, way out of their, you know, they're well out of their depth. And then this child and man hate each other because... Oh, that's it. Ed Helms is dating the mother of the child or something, right?
Kareem is like a stereotype. He's angry and misogynistic and like just an asshole. And clearly that's partially because he's supposed to be the black child of a single mother. And Ed Helms' character, Officer Coffee, is just unlikable, racist, like awkward, and there's just nothing to grab hold of in this movie. It's just upsetting.
Yep. And to that end, it's like, it's weird as well, right? Because this is it's well produced. You know what I mean? This is a movie. This is not a student movie. This is not a low budget movie. This is like a movie that there was real trailers and like, you know, there would have been a cinema release if it wasn't like released in the middle of lockdown, or at least like it was actually released at the early end of lockdown. But I think it was you know, it was straight to Netflix ultimately. But this is the kind of thing that you can see a billboard for on your local bus. You know, like, it's Hollywood. That's what I'm looking for. This is like a Hollywood film. And yet, it's worse than Barbie as the Princess and the Pauper. It's worse than a fairly dry documentary about a French painter that I will never remember the name of and have no interest in. It's like, and it is just a worse experience than dry media.
I will say that if we had watched this last year, it wouldn't be the worst thing on the list. I think Smolensk, I think Jeff Dunham, I think Sebastian Maniscalco, I think Tom Segura, I think there's just a whole heap of shit in that last year's set, right? I don't think Coffee and Cream would be the worst. But what I think is that everything on this list is fine, and Coffee and Cream is offensive, right? And
Yeah.
and I
Fair,
think
yeah.
and so I just think that like I think like it can't be that offensive because it had to actually get released, but still it's just not good. I think that there was, if you look at what's bad about the others, a lot of it is not their fault. It's just not made for us. I think like Barbie, it wasn't interesting, but we're not like young girls, so it probably wasn't going to be. Great Painters of the World, Juan Miro or Joan Miro, didn't work for us because it was a video about paintings in a foreign language. So you couldn't actually look at the paintings. You had to read the subtitles the whole time. Like, Remastered the Miami Show Band was just a bit bland. Like, because it was obviously clearly trying to fit a template of how these documentaries are made. I think that the Coffee and Kareem's problem is that they clearly set out to make a movie that they thought was going to be edgy, and it just comes out as kind of offensive and bland. And I think that's why it takes our shit list award.
Takes the spot. Congratulations to DTC Yukemuri Jinjo Hen from High and Low, and get the fuck out of here, Coffee and Cream.
So, first up, is DTC Yukimura Junjo Hen from High and Low better than Howl's Moving Castle?
This is the first year where I would even entertain the notion of yes.
I agree.
It's not.
It's not.
But it's
getting there. It's a real movie. It's actually good. People put some time and effort into it. It's an enjoyable film.
It's the closest I've ever come to saying yes to this question, yeah.
And Coffee and Kareem, is it worse than Jeff Dunham beside himself?
We established that it's not.
No, I don't think it is.
And it's not.
I think Jeff Dunham beside himself is an upsetting thing that exists, and I cannot believe that people willingly go to see him live. I feel like that's a room full of just the worst people.
He's still frustratingly popular as well. Like,
I think they should just post police outside his shows and arrest everyone that comes out.
Hi, are you here to see the show? Hands behind your back.
Yeah, I'm afraid. Yeah, you know what you did.
Hands in the air, please.
Yeah. All right. Well, as not a single incumbent toppled this year.
2023, not a throne killer. You know what I mean? No Kingslayers amongst them.
Everything is just fine. All right. Well, so TV, The Bear won it for TV, but Severance is still the king. Baldur's Gate 3 won it for games, but Disco Elysium still holds the crown. And Oppenheimer won it for movies, but Everything Everywhere All at Once is still the overall winner. And then for random Netflix movies, DTC Yukimura Junjo Hen from High and Low was the winner, and Coffee and Kareem was the worst. But Howl's Moving Castle is still the best random Netflix movie we've had, unsurprisingly, and Jeff Dunham's Beside Himself is still the worst thing that we have been subjected to so far. I think that's an exceptional show. I think how long have we been doing this now? 1, 2, 3, 4. We're in our 6th year. So we're in our 6th year now of doing this. We started in February of 2019. And I'm looking forward to all of the crazy things. Definitely doing this award show has made me think sometimes when I put something onto our doc for what to watch or play, is this going to be a winner, or do I need to watch something else and try and get a winner in?
Yeah, during today's show, I was looking at what I've reviewed, Monday to January to June, and I went, well, in those 6 months, what if I was forced to end the year here? Like, what would I talk about for TV? What would I talk about for games? What would I talk about for movies? I think in one of these categories, I'm super confident that something will make it into that final conversation.
I've got some exceptional movies. I've got some real bangers. I think.
You do.
I've got-
You do. Yes.
Yeah, I've got some bangers of games as well. I've got some pretty banging games.
Jamie, can I just check? This is sorry,
That's-
everyone. Bit of admin here.
That is wrong.
You
yeah.
didn't review Final Fantasy VII
No,
Rebirth.
but I didn't put that
I
in the
did.
document either. So
Yeah, I and you must have reviewed Balatro.
I did, yeah. Yeah, I've got some
Fine.
absolute bangers on my list there, and then TV shows. Well,
You've been watching a lot of old stuff, but
Yeah.
there are
Oh,
two
but-
new things there that will definitely.
actually, yeah, I've got some bangers. I've got some bangers in every
Yeah.
category. I'm taking the rest of the year off, guys. Don't worry about it.
I've got 6 months to try and find something that contends with your half a year of effort.
Look,
Whew.
you know, when you're this good in the first half of the year, you know, maybe I'll come out with some real bangers by the end of the year. What have
Why
I?
don't you spend the rest of the month just watching Jeff Dunham? The rest of the year, sorry. Go on.
the rest
Go on,
of the year watching Jeff
Take the
Dunham.
year off. Just watch some Jeff Dunham.
Have I got any bangers in this month's podcast? What am I reviewing in this month's podcast?
We did talk about it, but
Yeah.
we've got
Yeah.
2 weeks, so
You
we're
haven't,
not
told, you
recording.
haven't told me what you're doing, but I've told you what I'm doing.
I
All right.
almost know what I'm doing for all the
Well,
categories.
Let's wrap this up because this is the award show, not the normal show, so it's supposed to be tight. Thank you for joining us, everybody, and thank you for joining us year on year on year on year. This is really good fun, and even if it doesn't sort of get that far out, we really appreciate the people who do listen to it and do join us for it, because I really like doing this. It really shows me like new and interesting things. Especially the award show, I get to see stuff that Jonas really loved, and like I make an effort to sit down and watch it and play it, and I always end up with cool new things in my back pocket.
Should have been anime, but oh well.
You do usually make me watch anime, and it has expanded. I still think about Odd Taxi quite often. Like that's a good show.
I'm glad.
Yeah, so we're going to finish up there. Thank you for joining us, everybody. If you're listening to this as an audio podcast, you can watch us normally on the first Tuesday of every month, although the next one, I mean, this won't go up before the podcast is supposed to come out, but our next podcast has been delayed by a week. So Jonas has got a face on him that says, I could definitely do that.
But I was just like, well, you know, when actually am I going to edit this? I don't know.
No. Anyway, yeah, you can normally find us on the first Tuesday of every month, and if you follow me on Twitter at thebunyipman or on Instagram at thebunyipgram, you can get updates on schedules and all that jazz as to what's going on. That's it from me. You got any final words, Jonas?
I'm so warm.
Yeah, it's warm, isn't it?
I'm so warm, everyone.
All right, well, we're going to go and get nude. See you later, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye. Stop recording.
All right, that's it. Oh, yeah, I should stop. All right, well, that's it for everybody. Thank you for joining us. This was good fun. And it's so hot. Let's do the wrap up and then go away. Do you have any things you want to promote coming up?
Well, if you want a job in the games industry, then my job is to help you get a job in the games industry. So, you know, if you want to know about that, check out my organization Into Games. Otherwise, I'm not doing many personal projects at the moment. I've finished recording my audiobook. Now I just have to finish editing the audiobook. So maybe in the next 2 months, check out an audiobook called The Devil's Code by Colin Wade, narrated by Jonas Garway. I don't get royalties, so, you know, buy it if you want to. But don't buy it because I told you to. That's kind of it for me, really. Yeah, not much else on my plate.
Nice. We have a relatively quiet couple of weeks coming up as well. There's no stream tomorrow because I am busy, but we'll be back on Thursday with Stardew Valley, and then we're away for a whole week. There will be no stream in the first week of August as I am camping, and then I'm going to Ireland. But when we come back, there's a bunch of fun stuff. We've got I've actually got the schedule ready. I just need to get all the graphics and everything sorted, but I think everyone's locked in for their shows. So we've got Baddies Gate, our Evil Baldur's Gate playthrough coming back. We're doing more Ty the Tasmanian Tiger. There's 2 Lorelei and the Laser Eye streams on the schedule. There is City Skylines, Sea of Thieves, and yeah, it's starting to look like most months now are just going to be like a mishmash of things that only come up once a month, and then every Thursday's blocked out for Stardew until everyone gets bored of it. So yeah, we're looking to in September bringing in Dokapon Kingdom.
I keep
so
trying to warn you away from it, but I have got it installed.
So we might end up with like maybe we'll negotiate it off stream, but maybe something like a monthly Dokapon Kingdom game. I'll give you a month to cool down between session. And a few other bits are on the back burner. I think when Lorelei's finished, there'll be some space for some new things as well. And also, there's no viewer recommended game next month because we're missing a week, but they'll come back in September as well. So, with that all said, if you want updates on all of that, check out the Discord or my Twitter or my Instagram, all those places. It will get posted on all of those things. And then otherwise, I think we're going to finish up. Let's find someone to raid, shall we? See who we can raid.
Go for it, mate.
You know what I'm excited by with the Dokapon Kingdom stream is we haven't had a gaming stream together in a long, long time.
Yeah, I think I was second seat to you in something a little while ago. It wasn't Lorelei, was it Phantom?
No, it was Amnesia.
Detective? Yeah, I just jumped in, didn't I? Yeah, because you're on your lonesome. Mum, you asked me what the book's about. I've been recording this book since January. You and I have definitely talked about this book. But it's about a series of horrific murders in Edinburgh.
Oh, lovely.
Horrific.
Sounds great. Sounds lovely.
Mum's blaming her age.
Right, we're going to raid some first space. So, be nice, and we'll catch you next time. Bye!
Good night, everyone. It's so warm. Good night.